Welcome, Sister Girls. I know y'all are seeing the face and y'all are like, girl, she got her, right? So I'm so happy and so honored to introduce Miss Deborah Lee. How are you doing today? It is like I'm fangirling.
Thank you so much, Sharee. I'm so honored to be here on this podcast and to talk about my book. And as I was telling you, I'm so happy to see all these Black female reading clubs and book clubs because we need the support. So I appreciate it.
Okay, so 9 years as general counsel for BET, 10 years as COO, and then 13 years as CEO. You are by definition, time in the game, the godmother of Black entertainment, because that total 2 years spent. How are you doing now after like looking back on because you have a memoir, so you had to do a lot of looking back. So how has that process been for you?
It's been a great process. I left BET about 4 years ago. Never thought I would, but I looked up one day and realized it's been 32 years. And people started telling me the average length of CEO is from 4 to 5 years. And I have been CEO 13 years. And I just knew it was time. I had done a lot, of course it was more I wanted to do, but you just have to know when the time is right. And I'm not a retirement person, so I didn't plan to go sit on a beach somewhere. So I stayed busy. One, I wrote this book, which took me 2 years. I'm on 4 corporate boards, so I keep my hand in business and by giving advice to CEOs through their boards. I have a foundation, Leading Women Define, where I bring prominent women of color together once a year. And that's an amazing experience. And we took it on the road this year. So we did 2 new events, and we're going to do 2 new events this year. And I started a company after George Floyd's death called Monarchs Collective to help get more Black people on boards. So that's going well also. So the name of my book, I didn't say, my publisher tells me to say it all the time, is I Am DEBRA LEE. I Am DEBRA LEE. And that's also my Instagram tag and my Twitter tag.
Yes, so following us on Instagram and Twitter, I was like, oh, we famous now. It's a wrap. We got to change our phone number. Y'all can't connect to us regular no more.
I love that. I love that. And I should have a copy of my book here.
I have it right here. You ain't got to worry. Don't have to worry.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. But I'm very proud of the book, and it was a labor of love. It was also therapeutic. And I don't think I could have done it except for COVID. COVID slowed me down enough. I couldn't fly anywhere. I couldn't go. We did all our corporate boards by Zoom. So that gave me the time to, as you say, reflect on my career and my early life and put it all together in a way that I hope is inspirational for everyone.
Mm-hmm. So during the first part of your book, you talk quite heavily about get into your position. And I think a lot of us, when we get into places where it's filled with a lot of Black people, we automatically assume that we're not going to have the person that we might be the op, or the person that we might have to go at might be like white people or other people that look different from us. But one of your biggest hurdles were Black people protesting outside your home about the programming. And so my question to you is, how did you not get bogged down by that and stay inspired to come into the office every single day when you knew that the people that you were working for, like your heart was in it, your labor, your time, and your energy, those were the same people who are like with their tiki torches outside saying like, you need to be like, it needs to go away, it needs to be taken down.
Yeah.
How did you keep that?
Well, that was a difficult time. I grew up in a Black community. I went to all Black public schools. And by the time I got to college, I was really committed to giving back to the Black community. I wasn't sure how I was going to do that. I went to law school and eventually got to BET. But when I got to BET, I'm like, I'm a Harvard trained lawyer. I'm doing the right thing. I'm trying to help build this company. And I was elevated to CEO. And then all of a sudden these protesters show up. and they were really protesting hip hop videos.
Mhm.
And they had picked 3 in particular they wanted me to take off. And I met with the minister, a minister from Only, Maryland. And after listening to him, I said, I can't let you tell me what videos to take off. You
Mhm.
know, we have a standards committee. I have young people and older executives to get together and work with the labels. And we really are devoted to the community, and we try to do the right thing. You might not agree with all my decisions, but we try to do the right thing. And if I let you take off 3 videos this month, you'll be back next month with 3 more videos. But to come outside your house on a Saturday afternoon and have people with signs saying, I am not a hoe, I am not a bitch, is depressing.
Mhm.
And made my neighbors think, what is she doing over there at BET? And it kept up for 7 months. And not only was it depressing, and it was also unsafe because they were busing 200 people to my house every Saturday. And you feel like your anonymity is secure, that people don't know where you live. But now I'm like, well, all these people know where I live, and what if one of them decides to come back? And it was just myself and my daughter living there at the time. But anyway, it gave me more strength
Mhm.
in the end
Mhm.
to stick to my convictions, realize that I was going to get the praise or the criticism for any decisions I made. And so it made me more steadfast in making my own decisions. I was like, well, if I'm going to get criticized, I want them to be my decisions.
Mhm.
And eventually they went away, and eventually the programming started changing, and I'm really proud of what we built in terms of programming. So it was helpful in the end, even though it was hard to live through.
See, this is why you were the CEO, because had it been me, I would have been unhooking mics. Ain't gonna be no BET Awards, ain't gonna be no BET honors. Y'all can't come back. We closed for business. And y'all would be.
Right.
But I'm so happy that you persevered and you kept going, because it, like, the programming totally changed. So my next question is, now we are at a place where we know the faces and the names of Black women CEOs, but you were, in my opinion, the first to be the face of the Black woman CEO. Looking back, did you appreciate the visibility, or would you have preferred to remain in the background? Because there is a certain level of power when you're not placed in the center and the forefront, visible.
Right. Well, I'm an introvert by personality. Being out in front is exhausting for me. But as CEO, and even before that as COO, I had to learn how to do it. I had to learn to keep my voice from quivering, to be able to speak out. And it was part of the job. And so I just kept doing it. And that's the only way you become better at it. I'm still an introvert. I like quiet Friday nights at home, but I also like Grammy week when I'm going to events every night. And walking out on the stage of BET Awards was important for me to show that the company was run by a Black woman. And that was very important. And especially after Viacom acquired us, because people used to want to say the white folks at Viacom were running the business, and that just wasn't true. I mean, of course, we reported to them and we had to keep on budget and hit our ratings goal, but they weren't telling us what to program. So the reason I went out on that stage once a year, as hard as it was to know that 10 million people were at home watching me, was to emphasize that point. And I think you hit it on the nail that young women saw me as the face of BET. I even in the interviews, women have said to me, I went to Howard Communication School because of you. I saw that it was possible because of you, and that really warms my heart. And I have young Black men say to me, thank you, Miss Lee, for what you did for the culture, which warms my heart too. And I think that came from my support of the hip hop community, even though I worked hard with the hip hop community to change some of the images and change videos. But Busta Rhymes saw me the other night and he said, Miss Lee, I'll do anything for you. You raised me. I was like, wow, I raised Busta Rhymes. I didn't know that. But but I would go to hip hop awards so they could see me. And you know, seeing people that look like you is really important. And when I was growing up, the only thing we had was Soul Train. So it's really important for me to help build BET into a powerful 24-hour programming network, so that young people and older people could take pride in it.
Yes, and you did that. Okay.
Thank you.
So you acquired the game. You gave us Being Mary Jane, BET Honors, Black Girls Rock, and so much more, right? That was just the programming part. That wasn't even like the stuff that you had to go through behind the scenes. Your
Right.
vision for BET shifted, not just the network, but it was a cultural shift that other networks use as a formula to bring Black viewership to this.
Oh, thank you
So
for that.
it was because
Hmm.
y'all, they weren't out here with us. It was just,
Right.
yeah, at one point. So do you think the praise was as loud as the critics when you rebranded on BET, and did it matter?
I'm sorry, would you say that last part again? That I
So
think the praise.
yeah, did you think the praise was as loud as the critics when you rebranded BET, and did
Oh,
it matter?
yeah, that's interesting. I don't, of course, it was not as loud as the critics. I mean, when you have protesters outside your house, that's a news story.
Uh-huh.
When you get 7.7 million viewers for the game, that should be a big news story. And last I checked, that was still the highest rating for the premiere of a sitcom on cable. Um, but that's okay. You know, we knew what we were doing. We knew what we were accomplishing. I often tell the story that Tyler Perry sent me flowers after the premiere of the game, and Jonathan Rogers from TV One called me. So people in the industry saw it, and I still get praise. And people say, you know, some of the Black programming that's on today, the quality of it, the fact that it's scripted, the fact that so many networks are doing it, is due in some part to what I was able to accomplish at BET, and I appreciate that. And I'm happy things are changing. And you know, as I said, individuals come up to me. You know, I think I'm not one to toot my own horn, and I'm not a self promoter, even though I have to become one with this book.
Mhm.
It's like I got to call everybody I know and say, please buy this book. So you know, I'm happy knowing what we accomplished, and seeing the continued growth of BET.
Well, let me just tell you right now, y'all put y'all foot in that. I was like in my late 20s when Being Mary Jane premiered. And when I say it changed like everything. It changed everything. When the game got, first of all, we had never seen a show get canceled, to my knowledge, in my generation, get canceled and be picked up by a Black network and then flourish. Like it
Right.
drowned, it didn't do one season. We had a life with that. And then when This Is Why I Rock, I mean, I feel like that was like Black girl magic in action, right? Because we
Right.
were able to see not just entertainers, musicians, and rappers and actors. We were able to see activists and educators be put at the forefront. And oftentimes
That
they get
was,
out the conversation. So I feel like it was so intentional. And I just want to,
yeah.
we saw it. We reap the benefits of it every day because I still watch the reruns of Being Mary Jane.
Oh, good. Well, there's a story with each of those, but I know we don't have time. But I will say about Being Mary Jane, that's the first and only show I greenlit in the room. When Mara Brock Akil, after I read the pilot and I sat down with her and her husband Salim, I just, you know, I said, we're doing this show. I don't care how much it costs, we're going to make it work. And it just spoke to me as a Black woman who, I mean, the things I loved about Being Mary Jane, she was the most successful person in her family. So she had to support, you know, other people in her family. She had a romantic life. What a hot romantic life did she have? And she had to show up for work every day. You know, she was on air talent. So I love the fact fact that it looked at all aspects of Black women. And I had men call me and say, "Oh my God, were you looking in my window last night? How did you know?" So to get that kind of feedback was great. We haven't talked about the New Edition story, which was, oh my God, one
Every
of our
night,
proudest moments.
I didn't even know how y'all did that. We were up there every night it came on. It was just like, we didn't even know we could sit that long for television with one story. I'm just saying, we were thoroughly entertained. People we
Right.
was eating it up. We was there.
And the ratings stayed, high every night, which usually doesn't happen with a mini series. But the feedback from that, from white people who said, "Oh my God, I've always a New Edition fan," and I was a little surprised that it did so well. I mean, I have to say that because I said, well, our audience likes stories about females. And then someone on my team said, yeah, but they like stories about good looking men too. And I was like, okay. So we tried it and, it was a huge success. And Stephen Hill, who ran music program for me, it was my partner in crime a lot of times because he had such a love for music that, he brought it to things like that, to Black Girls Rock, to New Edition story. And, I have to give a lot of credit to my team. And people ask me if I miss BET. And the thing I miss most is working in a team and having successes in a team and being able to celebrate. I mean, when we got 7.7 million viewers for the game, it was like winning the Super Bowl because the average rating at CBS was 1.5 million. Without any promotion. They never did anything. I shouldn't say this, but they didn't do much for the show in terms of marketing. It was off the air 2 years. It took us 2 years to convince CBS to let us produce it because they thought we couldn't present the same quality. Well, we presented the same quality for less money and got higher ratings. I mean, now that's a story that should be told.
That is a story that should be told all the time.
Right.
That shows Black viewership has power.
Right.
Okay. So there were so many moments in the story where I was just like, they are not treating her right. Let's fight the people. They don't understand. And you felt that way, but you didn't throw in the towel. And you ended up getting the highest reward. But not every story ends that way. So how do you know when to keep grinding it out and when it's time to move on?
That's a very good question. I think, it's a gut level feeling. It depends on what you're fighting for. And for me, I was fighting for higher quality programming for BET and the Black community. And I didn't want to give up until I got there. After having those successes and seeing the network change, we also did a marketing research project where we decided we wanted all programming to respect, reflect, and elevate the audience. And those are pretty hefty goals for a TV network. I mean, because in a lot of sense, we were just a TV network, but the Black community expected so much from us. They wanted news. They wanted breaking news. We didn't have the resources or the, people to report on Trayvon Martin immediately when the verdict came out. I mean, we had planned for it. We had 106 in Park ready to go with live guests, but the verdict came down 10 p.m. on a Saturday night. And we had on Big Mama's house. And I went on Twitter and people were so criticizing us, but we were never CNN. We tried to work with CBS and be there for when President Obama was inaugurated or when he was elected. We tried to support and get out the vote. But there were a lot of things the Black community wanted from us as the first Black network. As we got more competition, they didn't ask for as much from the competition, but they still expected BET to be the beacon carrier and to put out, authentic stories, not, trash reality. I mean, they just didn't want that from us. But they would go watch at other networks and say, okay, this was my guilty pleasure. So it's hard for me to explain to Viacom why I was getting high ratings over here and I refused to do it. So, you pick your battles and some you win and you're gonna lose some. But as long as I was moving toward my goal and what I wanted for BET, I stayed there. And when I felt like I had done as much as I could do, I left. I would have liked to have won that Emmy before I left. We were nominated a couple of times, but I just what I wanted more than anything was for the press and viewers to treat BET like a real network.
Mhm.
And in the early days of cable, that was hard because we didn't have a lot of money. A lot of our programming were reruns, and our audience didn't like that. And a lot of it was music videos, which started off as Earth, Wind, and Fire and Aretha Franklin, but turned into Lil Wayne and, some of the other rappers. But we had to serve the audience, we had to give them both. We had to give them what they wanted. And as music changed, we had to change. But we also had to uphold standards for our audience and for our community. And that got me in trouble sometimes with the artists. Why are you rejecting my video? But it was something that I believed, I had to do. I didn't necessarily go to Harvard Law School to decide what videos to put on the air, but that ended up being my job. And so I often had to make the hard decisions.
Now, speaking of making the hard decisions, choices were just so prevalent. You had coined it the privilege of choosing. I've never heard that before, like in that way. Like, I'm like, it is a privilege to have certain options to choose from. And there were several times where you had to listen to yourself. The BET Awards honoring Michael Jackson, working with the Queen of Soul, Miss Aretha Franklin, and even the early decision that could have changed the trajectory of your life before you went off to college. All of us in the world want to know how to make the right choice and then stand firm in it. So how did you learn
Right.
to listen to and trust your voice?
Yeah. I think a lot of it came from my upbringing in Greensboro and strong teachers and, parents who told me I had to give back and just the way I grew up. And by the time I went to college, I did have a strong sense of self. The situation you were talking about is when I had an abortion before I went to law school.
Mhm.
And that was very hard. But now, and it's something I've never talked about, but
Mhm.
now I feel like I have to talk about it because the Supreme Court just did away with Roe versus Wade. And that's the only reason I had the ability to make a choice.
Mhm.
And that decision was made in my life 3 years after Roe versus Wade. And I was able to make the decision. I had just gotten into Harvard Law School. I wanted to go. I wasn't ready to be a mother. I was in a relationship that wasn't, a long-term relationship. And I had to deal with it. And I knew what I needed to do. But now, our young girls don't have that decision making ability anymore. And I want them to know it's nothing to be ashamed of. We should talk more about it and fight this recent wave of unfavorable decisions by the Supreme Court. So I think being the youngest child and moving around, always being a new kid at school. I mean, I just had to learn how to be myself.
Mhm.
And I was a big book reader. Books
Mhm.
were very important in my life.
Hey.
Um, Yay. I remember when I was sitting on the stoop. We didn't even have a porch. We had a stoop at my house in Greensboro. And I was sitting on the stoop reading the autobiography of Malcolm X one day. And I learned so much from that book. I was in high school at the time. But my dad came home and said I shouldn't be reading that book. He said, Deborah, you shouldn't. I said, Dad, I'm almost finished. It's what the damage is done. But that book was very important. And being an introvert and enjoying being by myself, I was a big reader, and that was important to me. And that's another reason I'm so proud of this book. I hope young girls take it in their bedroom, read it. Young boys also, older people also, black and white, and enjoy the book and learn something from it. And you
Yeah.
never know where you're going to learn something from, whether it's a speaker or a teacher or a boss, a worker. So as my dad told me, you can learn something from every situation.
Yes, I know I learned a lot. I had highlight, I underlined. I mean, I'm not even trying to
Oh,
be funny. It was so many parts of this book, and I'm just like, what gym after gym? All we had to do was get a book. So,
I appreciate that. And so many people have told me that. I love
yeah,
the highlighting. I used to do that all the time in school, but to have people highlighting my book, I'm like, oh, I'm so honored. And then when people ask me what I want readers to take away, I'm like, well, there's so much.
mhm,
And it's designed to be a business book, but I wanted to tell it through stories
mhm,
because it's easier for people to remember business advice if they can attach it to a Chris Brown story or how I dealt with Aretha or, just the stories in my career. So that's why there are no photos in the book because it's a
yeah.
business book. And I'm hoping business schools will adopt it. In fact, one of the reviewers said this was the most honest, provocative business book they ever read.
It
So
is.
I'm
I have to agree because I think we all went into it expecting like a 10 ways to become successful as a Black woman. See, and we got that, but we got your heart and we got your storytelling. So I think
right.
it's amazing. I do have a question about mental health because mental health is a big thing now, but before it's very taboo in the Black community to talk about mental health. And if I'm being honest, and the entire time I read your story, I sadly was waiting for you to like the next line to read. And this is when I had a breakdown, or this is when I had to like, and this is when I like, came in and flipped over a table because I just couldn't take it anymore. So, how were you able to maintain your mental health? And what advice would you give to Black women who are hungry to reach the mountaintop, but also need to hold on to their sanity in the process?
Right. That's such a great question. I had issues with mental health that I didn't even know I was having. And, I've always had very few close friends, but they helped me get through a lot. Then there were issues that I couldn't even talk about with my good friends. I talk about my relationship with Bob Johnson, which no one knew about for a while. And after that, turned into a dark place. One of my friends recommended I go see a therapist, and I had never even thought about that. And she could just tell by the way I was looking and that I was having a hard time with life. I don't know if she knew, I know she didn't know exactly what it was, but that was the best advice I've ever gotten. And when I went to a therapist, to be honest, she said, well, you have anxiety and you've had it all your life. And I was like, what? And she said, and you're a little depressed too. And I'm like, I'm the happiest person. No one would say I'm depressed. But she said, and anxiety is part of the reason you've been so successful because you work so hard and
Yeah.
you want to be successful. So anyway, I've been in therapy ever since, to tell the truth. And it's just helped me so much deal with issues of life, family, relationships. And, the hardest thing I've ever had to go through is my son died of depression during COVID.
Mm.
And, you know, he was really my guy. And it was in 2020 when we were in the darkest times of COVID. And he was 31. And to this day, I don't know everything he was going through. He seemed happy and he was a DJ and he had so much going for him. But he just couldn't deal with it anymore.
Mm.
So that especially makes me willing to talk about mental health because I don't want anyone else to go through that. I don't want other parents to go through that. And it really seems like our Black males are having an epidemic right now.
Yeah, they are.
And I
Great.
want to speak out. And I started an internship at the Recording Academy in my son's name. And I met with the first 5 interns during Grammy week. And it was just so heartwarming to talk to them and encourage them. And we all need somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be a parent. It can be a best friend. But when you're having issues, talking it out is the best way.
And I just want to thank you for sharing like your experiences in totality because I think your level of vulnerability it is something we don't see often from powerful women, because
Yeah,
the idea is to create this level of powerful that's like you can't penetrate through it. And then it's
right.
intimidating because we're just like, we don't measure up, because you feel like,
Hmm.
if I can't be this stoic type of woman, how am I gonna be like a Deborah Lee? Like, how do I get there? But when you wrote your heart, you talked about, being younger, trusting other people, and then finding your own voice, and then like every level. And I said it when I read it, I was like, you've experienced every level of womanhood when it comes to like children, from having a miscarriage to having an abortion,
Yeah,
to having actual kids, and having trouble, you know, doing with your career, and like that balancing, if it's a balance, and just
yeah.
expressing that so vividly. And then even like you just expressed now, losing a son. So
Worst thing in the world.
nobody can imagine that, and so I just want to thank you for being vulnerable, because we don't have a lot of books where icons like yourself are not only giving business advice, but you're also giving us like real, like, this is what happened
Right.
for real. So I just
Yeah.
want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. I
And
wanted others to know it's not as easy as it looks sometimes. People see me walk out on the BT stage and, the most fabulous outfit I could find, all made up. And, but that's not the whole story. That's not the whole story of anyone. And I wanted to tell the whole story.
you
So
did.
thank you.
And my last good question, I had to throw this in. In Boys in the Hood, at the end, they tell Omar Epps' character, "You got the juice now." Once you became CEO of BET, what was like a power move, like a flex, where it was just like, "I'm Deborah Lee, CEO. Like, y'all gotta have my steak and potatoes ready at 5 o'clock on like a certain level of heat." What was a flex that you had, like a major flex, where it was like, only the CEO could do this?
Oh my God, what a great question. Well, I was told early on that I had to learn to use the power I had. That was told to me by Bob Johnson. He said, you got the power, you got to learn how to use it. It may have been the Chris Brown decision,
Mhm,
because I had to make that all on my own. And
mhm,
I had competing sides
mhm,
coming at me on powerful sides on both hands. One, an executive who told me she would quit if I let him perform. Two, advertising guys having an opinion, the head of the label who I was friendly with. That really felt like a time when I was in this CEO bubble by myself.
mhm.
That, I asked all the people I could think of for advice, but when it really came down to it, it was my decision. Um, I'm trying to think of other times when I flexed. um, it may have been some of the things I love in life, like fashion and art, and maybe being able to afford some of the things I couldn't in my early life, going to fashion shows and, buying couture things and not being, again, ashamed of it. You know, uh, Getting my makeup done in the office. I used to be embarrassed about that, but it's part of the job. So if a male executive wanted to come in and talk to me, it's like, yeah, you can come in, I'm getting my makeup done. So why am I trying to hide that? I mean, I think as women, our path can be so much more difficult. We have to worry about what we wear, how our makeup is, our hair. Men just put on a black tux and they go on with their life. But people need to know that that's part of being a successful CEO. And the fun part, when I did my book, I asked the publisher when I did the cover, I said, "What should I wear? Should I be, corporate or casual or whatever?" She said, "I really want you to be fashion forward."
Yes,
And
and
this was,
it's
yeah,
beautiful. It's so beautiful. That was the first thing I noticed. I was like, "Miss Deborah Lee, she out here in these
right.
streets."
And I said and this is a Black female publisher, Krishan Troutman, who runs Legacy Lit at Hachette. She said, "I want you to be fashion forward." And I said, "I can do that because I've always loved fashion." So that's an Alexander McQueen dress on the cover of the book. And I haven't worn it since I did the cover. So I'm trying to figure out the best place to bring it out again. But that's part of me. That's what I love. So why shouldn't I be um, bold in reading fashion magazines on planes. Guys read sport magazines and they don't mind talking about football and basketball, which I love too. I love basketball. But I think it's really about finding yourself and bringing your whole self to what you're doing. And luckily, BET was the place where I could do that.
Well, Ms. Deborah Lee, those are the questions, all the questions I had. This was like the best conversation ever.
Oh,
And
thank you.
honestly, there aren't enough thank yous to give you or even enough flowers, but I will say that my eyes became much wider to all the possibilities in life because you walked out at the end of those award shows and said something to the people because you were speaking to me.
Mm,
I didn't even know it then, what that meant to have you just out there walking. Even when you said in your book that you were nervous and all, I'm just like, you walked out with so much power and grace and you always look
oh,
fabulous. And to me,
thank
that
you.
meant something because it normalized it. It was just
Mm,
like, oh, that's Miss Deborah
of
Lee.
course.
Yeah, she was a BT. Everybody knows her, Miss Deborah Lee, Miss Deborah Lee. And so I just want to say thank you so much. And it's been a great conversation. And I want people to get the book, get the book, get the book.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you for your heart and thank you for all the advice and thank you for your work.
Well, thank you. Thank you for what you do. And I can tell you're a true BET viewer, and I really appreciate that. I can see you grew up on BET.
I sure
So,
did.
yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you encouraging everyone to read the stories of Black women. It's so important.
Thank you so much and enjoy
All right.
your day.
Take care. Bye
Bye.
bye. Thank you.